So let's talk about the misgiving of being born into sin, because it's a misgiving, right? That's not how the Bible is really set up. Let's talk about it. Psalm 51:5. Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. The doctrine that all humans are born into sin is one of the most powerful core beliefs of the superstructure, right? Of the control system. It especially of the traditional judgment system. It reinforces separation from God before a child has even taken their first breath. In the traditional judgment system, this concept isn't just flawed, it's a fundamental lie that creates generational cycles of guilt, shame, and spiritual disempowerment. So let's actually see what it traditionally means and then break that down, right? So Romans 5:12, right? Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and the death through sin, in this way, death came to all people because all sin, right? The traditional interpretation is like this, right? In regular speech, all humans inherit sin nature from Adam. Every baby's born guilty and unclean before God. Salvation is needed to clean what was broken before birth. But let's talk about what this leads to, because I only said 3, but I'm finna drop 4. The belief that you are flawed before you even act. Shame embedded into identity. A lifelong quest to earn what was supposedly lost. And spiritual insecurity from the start. Tell me if this is what God wanted, because it don't sound like it. This belief is like waking up in a prison with no memory of your crime, being told you're guilty and must be saved, but never knowing what for. Right? It's that difficult. But let's actually talk about how the control system, right, or the control structure, or what I even call the superstructure, uses born into sin doctrine, right? So Genesis 3:11, who told you you were naked? Right? The control structure thrives on identity confusion. Telling someone they were born wrong is the ultimate way to disconnect them from the Lord, right? So here's how the doctrine actually works, right? So it establishes original separation, right? This is actually like how they use it, right? You are not like God, you are fallen. I'm finna go band for band. Because you are sinful, we must guide you. Even your desires are corrupt. You were never meant to walk boldly in God's presence. Salvation becomes something given by authority, not awakened within. This is all of the systems of control, right? The concept of born into sin goes on, but you see, I haven't given you a solution yet. I'm going to walk you into it. The problem is that the belief of being born sinful sets up an entire architecture of spiritual helplessness, right? So the superstructure doesn't just trap you through actions, it traps you by convincing you that your very being is wrong. You were made wrong. But lock in with me, lock in. In Genesis 1:27, so God created mankind in his own image, male and female, he created them. You were never born sinful, you were born divine. You were born into choice, not condemnation. Here's what God gave you. Right? Because too many times we talk about all the things God took, but God has never taken a thing from humanity. I could spend a day showing you how God is stuck by everybody. You cannot say God abandoned Adam and Eve if he walked them out of the garden, clothed them before they walked out of the garden, right? Made sure they were safe, and then stay by their children and their grandchildren. They sound like a fall to you? There's no distance between us and God. That's called the illusion of separation, right? So let's talk about what God gave you, right? Raw potential, the capacity for choice, not corruption, free will, a soul, right? With the freedom to awaken or sleep, and ego development, a natural part of individuation, not a curse, and separation as illusion, because you could have actually been separated from God. You could have actually been kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? Right, like God left somebody behind. But what I told you was big. God stayed with everybody he could, right? And the separation as an illusion is about a necessary forgetting to eventually remember. God placed us in a state of journey, not a state of judgment. Okay, so the journey includes shadow, but its reunion is purpose. Because anybody who knows about you walk through the valley of the shadow. I could get crazy. But let's actually talk about Jesus and the reversal of sin at birth. Right, conceptually. John 3:3. Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again. Born again is not about erasing sin, it's about waking up from the illusion of separation. Okay, most people don't understand what sin is conceptually. We're gonna make a video on what sin is, right? Because most of y'all think y'all sinning and it don't work the same way every time. Okay, but here's the thing. Here's what Jesus did. He exposed the lie that God was distant, right? He affirmed that every person carried divine image and worth. He taught that spiritual death wasn't punishment, it was sleep. Right? He said that children already belong to the kingdom. Right? Matthew 19:14. He made it clear that awakening is a return, not a reward. The born again experience is not about becoming worthy. It is about remembering who you already are. Look, just tying it up. You were not born sinful. You were born capable of awakening. You were not born to pursue your own shame. You were born capable of awakening to your own freedom. Right? Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece, created in Jesus Christ to do works, right? Which God prepared us in advance to do for us to do. We keep talking about born in sin until we don't want to read the Bible, huh? That's one of them things. This is why me and the church get into bad situations. Okay, but the lie that you were born to sin turns life into punishment. But the truth is that you were born into a garden of potential and with the freedom to remember God. So the takeaways of this, the belief that being born into sin is the superstructure, right? Is its first hook, right? It instills guilt before consciousness, creating cycles of fear and striving. It traumatizes children before birth. Jesus came to dismantle that illusion, not affirm it. True identity is divine, not defective. True identity is divine, not defective. True, I could get crazy. I could get crazy about this. But you were born to awaken, not to atone. Okay, so why, like, the thing is that you don't need to live like you're broken because you were never separate. Okay, I could get into so many narratives about that because there's so many misconceptions that the traditional justice system puts us onto. But you are not born into sin. That is not what the interpretation should be. And everybody talking about that is literally participating in a system that Jesus would overthrow.